as leaders, it's too confusing for us. That's why I say kill it, get rid of it. There is a place for evaluation, which is a cornerstone of what we're talking about. But what I think more importantly we need is it has to be about learning, and start with learning and design it differently around learning. What is learning? And I know everyone is going to say, oh, I got it. It's about acquiring skills, knowledge, and experiences. In school, we're taught to memorize that, recite it back on a test. That doesn't help us learn. That just gives us facts, right? Yeah. So you need to acquire it, and then you have to apply it.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Tami Rosen, who's the Chief People Officer at Pagaya. During the episode, Tami shares why it's time to ditch performance reviews, how to build work cultures that actually motivate people, why so many organizations are bad at hiring and how to do it better, and what the HR function of the future is going to look like. As always, before we jump into the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. With that being said, let's jump in. Tami, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you again. Where are you joining us from, I should ask? Because we've got some a really cool view behind you.
Yes, I'm joining from my New York office for Pagaya Technologies.
Nice. Before we jump in, firstly, you're always a lot of fun, so I'm excited to the episode. But tell everyone a little bit more about your background and journey to where we are now, and also a little bit about the business, in case people aren't aware of it.
Of course. So by way of background, I've spent the last 25 years in the people space, and I like to call it the people space versus the human resources space, which sounds so, I don't know, but I call it the people space. And I've worked across SaaS, internet, tech, finance, fintech, and even self-driving across Fortune 100s, across startups, scaling companies, small, big, public, and private, and mostly in the people space. So you probably would say, well, how'd you get into this? Well, I fell into it. I started out, I was pre-law out of college, worked for the public defender during college, and realized very quickly that wasn't going to be what I wanted to do. So I ended up, like anybody else, looking for a job and fell into banking at NatWest Bank in a loan training officer program for like 18 months, which led to about 3 years of working at NatWest, realizing very quickly I loved talking to all of the actual business owners and helping them build their businesses. And I enjoyed the quantitative side of it, but didn't want to be sitting in a cube just crunching numbers. And through that experience, it was kind of like giving me sort of those breadcrumbs of what I like and don't like. And I started exploring opportunities and accidentally went to meet a friend for an interview at a recruiting firm. And they started interviewing me in the conference room, in the waiting room. And next thing I know, they offered me a job to be a technical recruiter on Wall Street. And I was like, this sounds interesting. So I took the leap and shockingly went from banking to recruiting. And that's kind of what set me on my path. And through that, I realized very quickly I enjoyed helping people find their next opportunity. I didn't enjoy having to do it because that was what would get me paid. I enjoyed helping give advice and career advice. And that's when I decided I can do this better and started on my own. But I needed money and I needed a partner. At least that's what I thought. So I went to Goldman as a contract recruiter in technology, one of the first technical recruiters in the division. And that's how I set my path on. That was like the beginning of my finding what I loved and giving me purpose and meaning.
Amazing. I love that. And I love because a lot of people feel like when we come out of school, we have to we're going to do this. And, you end up finding out like you did, actually, this is not really what I thought it would be. And it's through tasting and experiencing different things that you then realize, okay, this is what I like, right? I didn't think I'd be doing this. My friends and family still don't know what I do for a living. And I try and explain to wait, you sit in a chair, you have really good conversations, and you get paid for that. So,
exactly.
And it's in HR. So I love that. And I love, obviously, recruitment is a gateway for many leaders. Into the HR space. But I love the fact that you also mentioned that you have the human side, but now you're also able to combine that with the quantitative side and the technology piece. And now that's a great match. In order to be a successful CHRO or CPO, as you like to say, you need those two blends, right?
Absolutely. And that's really, those first parts of my career was really finding that purpose and meaning. And then the second part was really mastering that craft. And that's what I did at my Goldman years, was really master the craft of HR through a lot of different places. I was there 17 years and worked across many different things, both functions and also divisions. And then that's what took me to take the risk of sort of taking my phase three, going out west, working for Apple and then working for many startups. And then obviously convening today where I sit at Pagaya, which wasn't in the cards for me to come to. It actually was an accident. I was looking actually to retire and see if I could give back to the industry from the outside going in and instead of on the inside out. And that's where I found this interesting founder through a colleague of mine that worked with me at Goldman, but was on the board. And we spoke for about 6 months. And I basically was like, no, I don't want to go back in. I want to retire. I want to go on boards. I want to teach. I want to write. I want to help the industry, elevate the industry. And then I said I'd be an advisor, and that advisory lasted 1 week on the job. And 3+ years later, I'm a failed entrepreneur, failed lawyer, failed
You can't look at
retiree.
it that way.
But having the time of my life.
Yeah, I feel like we need to define the word retirement, because I can't even imagine you being retired. Your version of retired immediately was more work across multiple things as well.
It's so funny you say that, because my kids and my husband said the same thing, because I was literally retired for a couple months,
There's
and it
no
was about
way.
the same. Yes, it was about the same time as Tom Brady retired. And I will tell you the funny story that happened. It was like the end of the year of 2020. And I'm like, yes, I'm definitely gonna be retired. January, February, it's gonna, I'm excited to move, do all my little projects. And my kids like, you're so much more busy than you are when you were working.
Exactly.
And wait, it got even better. So then the offer comes in from Pagaya, and I'm like, I think I got to take this as, to do this. And my kids, and I said, I said, I'm going to just do it. I'll do it as an advisory thing. It won't turn into anything. And then when I converted over to employee a week or two after, my kids were like, Mom, you're sitting there saying, how could Tom Brady actually go back in after retiring? Look at yourself. You
That's
can't be
amazing.
retired. And I
That's
said, the fact that my kids were comparing me to Tom Brady was just that alone. I was happy.
you like forget everything else. That's a story that you and the kids are always going to remember as well, right? That's going to be one of those things that you tell at like family dinners in the future, and be
Yeah.
like, remember that time. As well. Yeah, I can't imagine the amount of energy. We don't even know each other that well, but just from speaking to you a couple of times, the amount of energy and passion that you have, I can't even imagine. I think you drive yourself and the family crazy if you actually retired. I think I'm scared that I'm going to do that as well. Whenever my wife thinks about me retiring, she's like, you're going to go crazy. You're going to drive me crazy. You're going to drive Robin crazy. You need something to focus your energy and passion
Exactly.
into. Tell everyone a little bit about the business, just in case they aren't aware of the
Sure.
organization. Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't want to neglect that. So, Pagaya is a B2B2C financial technology company, and we're founded on this amazing mission to make financial opportunities more accessible to more people. And we do that by innovating the traditional underwriting systems and leveraging AI capabilities and data. So, what does this really mean? It's kind of like if you're a borrower and you go into your lender of choice, and you want to get a loan, a lot of times you don't even realize that you're getting turned down for maybe the wrong reasons. And we'll sit behind those lenders, or maybe it's a dealership, or maybe it's a buy now, pay later marketplace, whatever. And when you get it, you don't even realize that the company that you went to is saying no for a variety of reasons. It comes into our system and we see a broader picture of you and we say yes. And then
Oh,
you get that
amazing.
loan as if you got it from your lender of choice. And what the great part about it is then that lender now can reach more customers, which they all desire to do. We support it on the back end, and the customer gets a loan, the partner gets a new customer. And because we have this unique upfront funding model, the institutional investors that fund the loans get access to this unique set of investing assets. So it's a win-win-win.
Oh, I love
And
that.
and through the whole time that I've, been here, we've seen over 1.1 trillion loans go through our system, which allow applications, that is, which really enhances our AI capabilities to really extend and understand consumer behavior at a greater level.
Yeah. Is the AI helping you kind of identify things like bias for like underrepresented groups and stuff like that? Just
All of
I
that.
don't know a lot about it, so is it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And what it actually is doing, and we have a lot of work that my colleague Leslie Gillen, who's our growth officer, has been really focused on, is really this financial inclusion data
Yes.
and showing that we are reaching more Blacks and Latinx in the U.S., as well as, 1 in 2 loans are going to women. So that is actually incredible what we've been able to do, and we're outperforming what banks can do themselves or what lenders can do themselves. And that's why they want to partner with us, because we're able to get them more customers in a way that allows them to bring them into their ecosystem, get their FICO scores up, and be able to provide more and other products to them.
Wow, that's really amazing. I can see why what attracted you to the role now. Because it's not just finance. You're actually truly making a difference to people's lives that perhaps wouldn't be able to get that house, for example, or
Exactly.
or get that loan for medical reasons, whatever it may be. Well, it's putting everyone on a level playing field.
Exactly. And honestly, it did speak to me. And when I joined, I was the first C-suite at Pagaya. And I helped to kind of build and scale this thing from, our SPAC announcement to going public. And what's been the most rewarding is seeing how much, when I joined, we had maybe 1 or 2 partners. We now have 29. And we're seeing just the impact that we can have for people to be able to get access to the credit they desire to live the lives they want to have.
Amazing. You usually like, Chris, it's time to replace performance reviews with something better. Right? We've heard this before, right? We've heard quite a few different takes on this. This is not a new topic to discuss, but I'd love to hear your take on this.
Well, you said replace. I almost think they're dead and they should be killed. So I'm going to go a little stronger than that.
Okay.
I,
Okay.
you know, I
All
think
right.
I
Okay.
think the way we think about them is just all wrong. And it's funny as I thought about this problem, because you're right, people have made tweaks and changes over the
Yeah.
years. It's You have to go back to why were they created and what do they serve? And if you look back in time, they were created actually in the industrial era after World War One, and they were taken from the military. And the military used this sense of a performance review to decide if someone should be transferred, should be terminated, or should be promoted. And that got into industry, and we sort of just adopted it as is, regardless that industry and being in the military are very different types of environments.
Hmm.
Um, and they largely, like you said, have not changed, even though they've had some tweaks. People have moved conversations around, ratings, no ratings, 360s, no 360s. But everybody is still trying to figure out what to do with them because they have too many outcomes. It's whether you get paid, whether you get promoted, whether there's a compliance thing and that's embedded in there that has to happen. And those are muddying the purpose of why you need a performance review. Why do you need a performance review? You need it to kind of set where somebody is and how they're doing, and then also to help them grow. And those two things get muddied when pay, performance, and compliance are sort of the outcomes. Because as leaders, it's too confusing for us. So I think we need to flip it on its head. That's why I say kill it, get rid of it. There is a place for evaluation, which is a cornerstone of what we're talking about. But what I think more importantly we need is it has to be about learning, and start with learning and design it differently around learning. What is learning? And I know everyone is going to say, oh, I got it. It's about acquiring skills, knowledge, and experiences. Well, yeah, but in school, we're taught to memorize that and to like recite it back on a test. That doesn't help us learn. That just
No.
gives us facts, right?
Yeah.
So you need to acquire it and then you have to apply it. And if you're going to do apply it, that's what learning really is. And in the workplace, it's about acquiring all of these skills, knowledge, and experiences, and then applying it to those new and different situations that make better outcomes. And so we should stop managing performance and start motivating performance by looking at learning first. And you have to create those systems around it. So to give you an example, at Pagaya, what we did is we said, we're going to have something called the continuous learning cycle, centered around learning. What is that about? There are 4 questions and very simple. An employee goes in and says, what have I accomplished over the first 3 to 6 months I've been here? What have I learned, both successes and failures through that time? What am I going to do in the next 3 to 6 months? And what support and help do I need from Pagaya and my manager to do that? And then an employee writes a reflection, manager writes a reflection. That all happens in all of 2 to 3 weeks. And conversations happen by the 4th week. we get 100% of people completing their self-reflections, and everybody gets a conversation. I've not, and the crazy part about it, we've now done this over 4 or 5 cycles. We have 75% of people saying they look forward to the next one and that they actually have learned something new and it's made them more impactful and better at their jobs. Now, the hardest part of this, learning's hard, right? We all think it's easy.
Yeah.
I look at it, the equation of like, if I'm a skier and now you're asking me to be a snowboarder, that's a really different thing. Some of the principles are the same. Some of the terrain is the same, but the way you're doing it is different. And you're going to have to get a little humbled, and it may take you a while to be an expert, right? And that's what we're trying to teach at Pagaya, is that learning is really what we're centering around, because learning makes you reach your potential greater and faster. And we talk about potential looking in the past. We have to talk about potential looking in the future.
Wow. I feel like you just did a really good TED talk right there. Just that when I post in my head, I was like, "This is like amazing," and you can. I don't even know.
Thank you.
I know that it was really. I can tell this. I can tell. I could see and feel and hear the passion in everything you said, and I'm sure everyone listening feels the same way. And great. I love the fact the way you kept it really simple. The questions, the process over. You said 3 weeks, right? Was it?
Yeah, 4 weeks
Three,
tops.
4 weeks as well. Oh, where do I even start with my questions here? Why? I love the fact that you gave the background as well, right? Why do you? I think many people they're listening know this, but why do you think we still continue to do it the same way?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's because it's hard to change. It's hard to think differently about stuff. And even coming to Pagaya, which, we're in Israel and we're in the US, and we're a mix of technology people and finance people, and everyone's coming from different environments where performance reviews are just sort of the run of the mill, right? And everybody wants them because they want to know, did I exceed? Did I not? What am I going to get paid? What am I going to get promoted? All those things. And so people expect them. So I think that's one. And even when I came to Pagaya to try to design it, everyone expected me to design something that would look like that. And there was a lot of resistance at first. But then when people realize that what a performance review does is it's very anxiety provoking. I don't know. I mean, I'll ask you, do you look forward
I
to
don't.
performance review
I never looked forward to it as the manager or the employee.
ever?
on either side of the spectrum, right? As well. So no, never. No, I was like, oh, here we go. Yeah,
Yeah, here we go again. And
yeah,
and
yeah.
honestly, it might be like fearing root canal, right? Like you're just not sure it's going to actually be something that's positive for you, and you don't know what surprises are going to be in there. And they're riddled with biases, whether a recency bias or somebody sees something written in a 360 and they need to use it in order to make sure that they don't pay you, or whatever it may be. There's always something in there, and you're not. What you don't do in a review, because you have that anxiety, is you're not comfortable and willing to share all the things that are going on and be honest. And that's what, and I think, again, your question is why people won't move is because it's hard to change, and it's hard to go from what they expect to something where you actually have to be vulnerable. You have to be honest, introspective, and you have to be willing to share where you've really fallen down and also where you succeeded. Now, I'll ask you this. Most people probably don't even know why they succeeded on something. It just
That's fair.
and to figure that out and to replicate that, that's actually magic.
Oh, it's so funny you said that, because as we're growing here at HR Leaders, Shane and I are trying to map out our success of what made us successful in certain things, because we need to then share that with employees we're hiring, right? At the moment, this lives in Shane's brain and lives in my brain. And to your point, we don't necessarily know the ingredients of why it's working. And when we sat down, we're trying to write the processes, and we're like, oh, this is really hard, like to actually replicate that, because as you said, that's the magic, right? If you can encapsulate that and share that as well, that's where it gets magical. I do want to ask though, how did you overcome that? Both with the employees, but also in other companies I've seen there's resistance from leadership who also have gone through that traditional performance review process.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so look, I did try this out at another company before this, and it was very successful as well. Partly what I think overcame it is just that when you are scaling as fast as we were as a company, and you wanted to get stuff going and you center around learning even as your culture, it was easy to kind of marry it together and say we'd have another process that would actually look at are you, a high, medium, low performer? Are you high, medium, low potential? And looking at that way and really doing more talent mapping and reviews, which are much more effective because you're having several moments of these CLCs, as I call them, plus you're dealing with the day to day. And then when you come in and have a talent conversation as a leader, you can really see your full chessboard and think about how you're motivating their performance, moving them into opportunities, getting them promoted, making sure that their impact's being felt and known and that they're in the right places to do that, or even to help course correct when they make those mistakes. And you start to value things differently. You value people's learning agility over what they committed alone, right? So yes, they had impact, but they also had learning agility, which then shows they have greater potential to do more things and to have greater impact at your company in the future.
What about how are you capturing this information in order to have the data and to measure, etc.?
Yeah, so we use like a regular tool like anybody else for capturing it so that it does live and breathe in a place. And then we also do surveys throughout the year for managers and employees on the experiences they're having. What we have seen is that it's not just about capturing the data, we're seeing it become a way of working. So now the CLC is something that I do with you as my employee. And then you see it the opposite, managers asking employees like in the same way how they're doing. And then you're also seeing when two teams are doing a big project together and maybe something doesn't work, they use the CLC method to kind of think about it. What are we committing to? What have we not done well? What have we done well? Why? And how we can help each other so that the next 6 months that we have these goals, we're going to make sure we achieve them greater. So you're starting to see it's become a way of working.
Mm.
And I see it for myself. Like I've been, I told you I did not intend to come to Pagaya. It has been the best experience for me in the last decade, joining, and I'm forever grateful. And one of the reasons is the learning that I've had personally. And usually at my level, I'm not going to be expected to learn as much. I'm expected to teach. And even my founder and others who I work with are helping me grow and learn as well. And as a result, I've evolved and have had greater impact as a result too.
So it's really become part of the culture, right? So when people join the business, this is how we do. This is how things get done. Like this is how we do it, right? And it's kind of permeating throughout the whole entire
Yeah.
organization, as well. I love that. Do you link this to leaders and managers' performance in any
Um,
way for accountability? Just out of curiosity.
so no, not explicitly. And I think part of that is we want people to do it not because they're being measured to do it, but because it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing people do that. I mean, every leader looks forward to doing their CLCs, and the employees do as well, because they're conversations that are real conversations that you're having with someone genuinely wanting to help you be better. And that doesn't mean those conversations are always easy. Because when you're exploring why you failed or even why you succeeded and you want to replicate the success and not do the failure, it takes taking off the blind spots that you have and really opening up your horizon and trying things out. So, that's something people have to be ready for. And not everybody wants to be in a learning environment. We'll be clear about that. And some of these CLCs have evoked people saying, you know what, Pagaya's not right for me. And that's okay, because if you want to do what you've always done, and we want you to do more, let's have an honest conversation about it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I love that radical candor. yeah, yeah,
Effectively,
yeah,
effectively.
yeah, pretty much. I know something you're also super passionate about, and this kind of links to what we're talking about. Really, is building work cultures that actually motivate people. Could you share more
Yeah.
about what you actually mean by that?
Yeah, coming off of COVID and watching everybody quickly jump to working remotely, and not thinking about how you work, I think is one of the big reasons why you see a lot of companies now reversing their location policy. And I call it a location policy because that's all it is. If you really want to create culture that motivate people, you have to start with how people work, regardless of location, and then create those dynamics, whether it's through asynchronous, synchronous work that's remote, and then those that's in person. And I think we cannot underestimate how important it is to connect with people and to be in person. And when you take that out of the equation, you lose something, and you have to be conscious of what you're losing and know your culture and what's important in that culture to have it. So some companies can be fully remote and then figure out how they work, if that works for how they want to get work done, and they've been intentional about it. And others have to have more of a hybrid, and then there's some that, are fully in office. And regardless of that location, it's those norms underlying that help. And why I talk a lot about cultures of learning is because I think that's what really builds that motivation for people. Because people want to be progressing their career, they want to show growth. And you can't have growth if it's just a step function on a promotion scale. You have to have growth that you're actually becoming an expert at something and giving back and making impact and really delivering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I think companies are just, I don't think they're making decisions out of data-driven decisions. They're making kind of fear-based
Mm-hmm.
decisions in many ways. Like they feel like a lack of control, if that makes sense,
Yep.
as well. And it's not because it's the right thing to do. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing to this is the challenge with building work cultures is that we don't look at it as a strategy that's important to driving the business outcome. And it has to be, because people strategy and culture is your business strategy. And if you miss those two things and you think they're like the afterthoughts, you'll be sorely mistaken. And I fundamentally believe this, that, I talked to so many CEOs over my career, and I'd ask them, where would you put your people strategy in relation to all the other things that you're doing, all your other goals and other outcomes? And typically they weren't in the top five or in the top 10.
It wasn't in
It
the
was
top
sort of,
five or top 10.
no. And
What?
and I think it was shocking to me, because I thought people really didn't realize that without people, you don't have a company. We're not all GPT, right? Maybe that'll be the future, but it's not now. So how do we think about what makes us unique as humans and realize that that's what's making your company great? Having the right people in the right place at the right time with the right combination. Like, think about it. Sports teams are the best to look at this. Where they're winning, it's when they have this like synergy, and they're connected in a way, regardless of their stature or who they are, or if they're a hero or not a hero, they're working together. And I live both in New York and California. So if I look at, the Golden State Warriors, they have all the stars on their team, but they can't win. And then you look at the New York Knicks, who have up and coming stars who are all playing together, and they're starting to win. And that's what I think makes people's strategy so important. It's not just about winning the game, it's about winning the long-term mission for your company. And you have to continually think about, do you have the right people in the right places with the right combinations to deliver that?
Yeah. No, I had a cool analogy actually. I was thinking while you're saying that as well, from a office point of view. Like the best team isn't the one that's got the best football stadium, right? Again, right? It's about the people on the pitch, on the field. They're the ones that make it win. It's not about that's why you're $1 billion sports franchise, not because you're selling tickets, not because of your stadium, not because of anything else, but because of the people that go out there on the pitch and play the game together.
And if they're doing it out of the love of the craft, and that they're selfless, and they're like, I call that the missionary person, the
Mm-hmm.
person that's really out for the mission, and they're not worrying about, did I get paid this year, this, or did I get this promotion, or do I have this? They're worrying about what is the best use for me, for the company, to make the best difference, versus the other side, when you get too many mercenaries. And that's what happens in sports when they get, the big deals and they get the big marketing campaigns. They then become me, 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 me. And it's not about the team, the franchise, and the long term. And same things happens in companies all the time.
Yeah. Well, on that point, now leads us quite nice to our next question. Why are so many organizations bad at hiring? It's a good segue from there.
Great. Well, I think we might need a whole other podcast on this one because there's so much to say. Um, but honestly, the reason is most people think they're good interviewers, and most people think they can assess talent because they've done the job. And the answer, and that's not accurate. It's a craft. Interviewing is a craft, and you have to really sit and understand it. Most people do 30 to 45-minute interviews. And unfortunately, they don't realize they're relying on instinct and intuition, which is fully based on their own biases on how they see the world. And do I like or dislike the person is what they come out with versus is this person capable and going to be successful at the company? And so I think they're bad at hiring because we're confusing trying to get someone I want to enjoy working with versus someone who's capable and can have the impact we need. And I offer some suggestions here, which is, yes, you have to assess skills and capabilities. That's like table stakes. But then you have to really go into that behavior, and everyone's going to say, oh, behavioral interviewing or the WHO method, whatever choice you have, great. But making sure you have multiple examples of seeing that behavior, not just the one someone prepared for you, and really thinking about how you put that into action. And it's not just a Q&A session, but maybe it's a whiteboarding session, or it's a practical that you give someone they come back to. And then you really have to take the third part is really about assessing culture. So one is skills and capabilities. Next is understanding the behaviors and how they like to work and can that work with you. And then the third is the culture in which they work best in. And can they work in the culture that you have? I've made several mistakes in my career of taking jobs where I didn't really assess the culture. Sometimes I've been lucky, it worked really well for me, and sometimes it wasn't. And so I even think as an employee looking for that next job, you also have to be, once you get to that level, ask those questions about the culture, because that's going to make or break whether you can succeed. You could be the best trader, the best salesperson, the best HR person, but in that environment, you may not be able to work.
Yeah. How have you made this a consistent process and given your managers the tools to make this work in the organization?
We're scaling so fast, and we've been we're an 8-year-old company, almost 8-year-old company, and I've been here 3 years. I would say we're still at it. This is not something that you can perfect overnight, because everyone's knee-jerk reaction is to hire the person they know, which usually is the person that looks like them. And you have to really be at it. Most people know at my company, I'm very focused on this, always trying to make sure we have a lot of different people in the interview process. We have a lot of people, different interviewers, interviewees, making sure we're looking across. We're not making just the one and done conversation, which happens often. I know this person at this company, so let me bring them. You have to kind of push yourself to not do that sometimes and really look at who's going to be the right person right now for this role and who really fits in our culture and why.
Yeah, it's so easy to fall into that habit, right? Because it takes more work to be intentional about doing that as well,
Yes.
especially when you're under pressure to deliver yourself, your team. You're like, I just need to get this done, and then you just make that decision based on bias and someone that looks like me, I relate to, or I used to work with them, so let's do that. It's harder actually to be more intentional and do it the right way. Um,
100%.
yeah. What about the future of the function? You've been in it for a long time, right? We've discussed that. What do you think the future of the HR function will look like?
Well, first, I'd love to find a new name. I think human resources used to be human capital, then it was personnel. I mean, like all these different crazy names that really, at the end of the day, it's about people. And I think we need a better way of calling what the function is and elevating it to a place where people see it's as critical, like I said, as the business strategy that you have or the product strategy you have. So first, I would say HR is riddled with a couple of different things. One is we have so much compliance risk and operations that have to happen, which are just like you can't get wrong. Making sure someone gets paid, making sure someone gets transferred, making sure all these different things. You have to just do that. And those operational aspects are very much similar to some of the other G&A functions. So I would see trying to figure out more of a shared services across all of that, which really takes the operational aspect out of it, and then create a second component, which is really more of these kind of pods of value add, relationship driven, coaching type roles, we call them business partners today, but I think they're riddled with so much process and procedure that they can't actually get in and really help with, you know, really fostering that environment of learning and growth that is necessary, and creating those right teams with the right org structures to deliver on whatever comes your way, whether you're having market challenges or it's internal company challenges or whatnot. So I would see trying to separate out the operational component, and kind of marrying it with some of the other functions that have high operational components, and then really think about the strategy part and where you can actually have the most impact, because it's those one-to-one conversations that go a long way,
Yeah.
more than, whether or not, people got to the right place at the right time.
Mm. We posted a clip yesterday with a CPO that came on the show, and I asked a similar question. She said, "Chris, we're set up to fail in most cases, because we've got those
We
two
are.
areas that you're talking about, and we're massively understaffed. But I'm supposed to be able to get all of that stuff right over here, whilst at the same time being future focused, strategic, partnering in the business, all the things you're talking about, and you just kind of pulled in two different directions, and then you
100%.
end up doing an average job at both, as well. Do you agree with that statement?"
I do. And I think one of the biggest challenges is still quite a stigma about HR. Ooh, go to HR, right? It's always bad. And the stigma is problematic. I mean, I tell the story that one time I was vacationing with my family and I was wearing one of the shirts of the company I was working at. And a gentleman came up to me and said, "Hey, what do you do at this company? Is that your company?" I said, "Yeah, it's one of the companies I work for." And he's like, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well," he's like, "Actually, no, what does the company do?" So I went on what the company does, why it matters, blah, blah, blah. We talked like 15 minutes about the company and its mission. And he said, "What are you, the chief product officer of the company?" And I said, "No, actually, but I am a CPO." And he looks at me
Yeah.
and he looks at me and goes, "Oh, wow. And you actually are intelligent." And
Oh my god.
I was like, "And you actually know your business and you're actually like, wow." And he was like confused. And I was then confused because I'm like, is this a compliment or is this not a compliment? And it was really not. And what really dawned on me from that moment is that there's still this stigma about being in HR. And frankly, we have to get that changed. And that's why it's about how people is our product that we are delivering to the organization to make the impact they need to deliver on the business strategy that's out there. And we need more people in the HR function that really think about business, have quantitative skills, qualitative skills, relationship skills, communication skills. Like you have to have it all. And I think we have to upskill ourselves in order to be able to meet that demand.
Yeah. And firstly, I completely agree with everything you're saying. I love the story, as well, because we still do have that issue. It's also one of the reasons why, 7-8 years ago I started the show, because I was having these crazy, like these amazing conversations with leaders like yourself and hearing all of the great work that was happening, and then I could see the perception of HR. I was like, wait, this doesn't match up. Like I don't think people are really aware of what's actually happening and the great work that's being done. And that's why I started the show in the first place, to share the stories and the work that's happening. And even my friends and family, when they're like, "Oh, I didn't realize that, Chris." I'm like, "Yeah, because I did a video. I never released it, actually. I should release it one day, where I went out on the streets and I asked the average worker, what does their HR team do? And it was just awful. I didn't want to post it because I felt like I was just making it
Oh
worse.
my
Where
gosh.
literally I went to Canary Wharf, the financial district in the UK.
Yeah.
I asked like people as they're coming to home from the train station, "Hey, what is the role of your HR?" And it was all the things you can imagine: hiring, firing, compliance. They pretend to be my friend, but they're not, and they go tell my boss, like all the things. And I was like, I can't post this on LinkedIn, because like this is just going to do more damage
No, it's so much damage.
than good. But because I thought that I was going to get at least a couple people that are like, giving me some really cool answers, as well. But anyways, but listen, Tammy, I could talk to you forever. I honestly, I love your passion for what you do. And you said earlier, when you retire you want to give back to the profession in maybe like a teaching capacity. I can say without a shadow of a doubt you'd be amazing at that. Just having you on the
Thank
show
you.
today, as well. Some of the examples you've shared, the way in which you've shared it is really, really insightful. And I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a fun conversation, and I agree, we probably can talk forever.
See you later. Thanks so much.
Thank you.